I know this video I've probably labelled as an unboxing video, but let's get the unboxing out of the way. Well, that's that done. Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about, if you hadn't already noticed at the top of the video, Seagate NAS SSDs, the Ironwolf 110. I've already talked about it on this channel and the other channel, but I want to go into a little bit more detail here. Now, once again, I know this video I've probably labelled as an unboxing video, but let's get the unboxing out of the way. Well, that's that done. Now, with these drives, it has been a lot of questions since I first talked about this at the start of the year at CES 2019. Do we need a Seagate Ironwolf NAS SSD? Because is this just a coining thing from Seagate where they're just trying to get a bit of money out of us? What's wrong with just using the regular Samsung SSDs that we've been using all along? Let's face it, Samsung SSDs are currently the most popular SSDs that are used in NAS right now. That's in flash stations, that's in SSD caching, that's in tiered storage, 10 GBE fast editing, the works. Why has Seagate suddenly decided that you need this Seagate NAS SSD? Because that's what it is. It's a 7mm high SSD drive. It is SATA in connectivity. I'm going to stare at the camera and hopefully you can see that. Again, very standard drive. If we compare it size for size, we can look at it against that Samsung there. There's the difference there. The difference in height, it's exactly the same. Maybe put the SATA connections next to each other would make a great deal more sense. It is a very, very similar drive indeed. Is this just something Seagate have been doing to make more money out of people? I genuinely don't think it is, and I've talked about it on other videos, but I am going to go into a lot more detail here. Why should you be considering buying a Samsung NAS SSD? Well, first and foremost, durability. They've got some software built into the controller on these called DuraWrite. Now, what that is, they already introduced it with their Nitro series. It's something to do, it's more to do with over provisioning and the better layer of data on the SSD. For too long, when SSDs were around, people were more concerned with the speed of data and not the layout of data, something that people on hard drives had worried about for a great deal of time, dealing with things like defragmentation and more. So when you are writing data to an SSD, speed of course is paramount, but early SSDs, because they spent less time worrying about data being laid out, it meant that in the smaller capacities that SSDs arrive in, data was very poorly laid out inside. They could have beefed up the controller inside, or a better controller to handle and lay that data out as well as possible inside on the NAND chips, but that would have bottlenecked performance ever so slightly. So they tried to avoid that, because when it comes to people buying SSDs, speed is always the big selling point. Now, DuraWrite gives you the ability to continue getting those top read-write speeds on the disk, and that controller uses a system of SSD dynamic over provisioning and better layout of data within the NAND chips to give you that increased performance without losing the potential bottleneck later on of badly laid out data inside. When the data is written to the disk, poorly laid out data, particularly in a NAS environment where read and write operations are constant and the disk is going to be on for days, weeks, months, or even years at a time, this is a real tremendous selling point for this drive. It is something we're seeing via a number of different names across different, Kingston, WD, all of the, and SanDisk. They've all got different names for the same technique of dynamic over provisioning, and that's something you get with this disk. But the other reasons I think this is a good disk is, one, to do with the Ironwolf logo being on this drive for a number of buyers. I know it seems incredibly pathetic to say that, but when you want to buy a hard drive for your NAS, and so many of us now buy a WD Red, a Seagate Ironwolf, or a Toshiba Red NAS hard drive. The reason you do that is it's got the word NAS emblazoned in big letters, but also because you know that drive is designed for a NAS environment. It's designed for being on for 24/7. It's designed for an enhanced vibration sensor when you've got multiple drives in an array. It's designed for sporadic read and write environments, in the same way a surveillance drive is better geared towards intense write operations than read, because you're recording more footage than you will ever access. So with an SSD having that NAS brand on there, a lot of people are going to find it a lot easier to buy this for their NAS when they need SSD for caching or storage than going for the likes of Samsung, SanDisk, OCZ, Kingston, or any one of the myriad of SSD brands out there. Now, I'm surprised Seagate got here first with this. I genuinely thought it would be WD Red that would come out with a NAS SSD first. They got out there with their WD Blue, Green and Black, you know, some of their trademark colouring system there. So I'm surprised they didn't get the WD Red SSD to the table quicker. Now, with this drive, there's also other advantages. For a start, just like other Ironwolf drives, it arrives with 2 years of data protection. A number of their more enterprise level drives, their hard drives, have a feature that is included in this called Rescue or Rescue Plus or Data Recovery Rescue. It's got different names depending over the years, but what it means ultimately is for the first 2 years that you've got this device, you've got free data recovery. As long as you don't do anything ridiculous like smashing the drive in half or, you know, sticking a knife through it, which would be impressive. As long as a failing of the drive is an understandable day-to-day occurrence, you are able to take advantage of that data recovery service. You send the drive off, they will try to retrieve as much data as they can off the disk, and they've got a very high success rate, and then they send it back to you on a USB disk. Now, anyone that's lost drives, lost data in a fire, lost photos of family members, their wedding photos, or business client information will know that data recovery services are really expensive. They are ridiculously expensive. Sometimes you could spend 5, 10, 15,000 pounds because ultimately when you go to a vendor about data recovery, they have to really go through it little by little, and they know that you are going to pretty much pay whatever. It's like when you have someone come around to do your boiler or someone come around to do stuff around your house that you are just not qualified to do. They have you over a barrel. So getting data recovery services included with your drive is very, very useful indeed. Don't get me wrong, doesn't cover everything. And of course, I would recommend you check out the terms and conditions in advance. But it is still a great little service included. Alongside those 2 years of data recovery, you get 5 years of warranty. And again, as I've mentioned in other videos, I'll say it again, I'm not going to give that loads of attention because 5 years for me is the minimum you should get for an SSD. Any SSD brand out there that is selling an SSD with less than 5 years, don't buy it. And I include Seagate in that. Because an SSD, because it's got no moving parts, uses less electricity, is NAND chip based, and is, gets far, far less degradation over time than a hard drive. In fact, most SSDs will outlive the NAS they're in. Any brand that's not prepared to put 5 years of warranty minimum on their drive, I would give them a miss. And I'm talking to you, WD, with some of your lesser ones. I like WD, but there's no denying that 5 years should be minimum and not used as a sales technique. So, well done on 5 years, Seagate, but I'm not going to give you props on that. Another thing that the Seagate Ironwolf series has that's included with these coming soon is the Seagate Ironwolf Health Management System. What that means is, if you install this in a Synology, a QNAP, a Thecus, an Acer Store, a TerraMaster, or other brands, I think TerraMaster is still to come. Once you install it inside and go to the storage manager, not only can you see disk information and run smart tests, but the Seagate Health Management tool will let you get more information about the disk, do more forensic level checks and repairs on the disk on a bit set level. But do remember that again, it will also identify problems and make recommendations to you to fix those problems or to cash in on that data recovery service when needed. Now again, it will differ depending on your situation and of course the utility of your disk, whether it's caching or a flash station or whatever, but it's still a great little feature and functionality to include. The drives are currently available in 240 gig, 480 gig, 960 gig, 1.92 gig, which is terabytes, which is what I've got here, and 3.82 terabytes. So a good range of sizes, and these are 2.5-inch drives. They'll pretty much fit in any NAS, and I'm going to be doing speed tests with this disk inside both Synology and a QNAP. I'll try and get it inside the WD as well to give you a good basis of comparison. Now, who is this disk for? Well, I've already mentioned flash station and cache users, so let's go in a little bit more detail there, shall we? They're still expensive. SSDs, whether it's this, the Seagate Ironwolf SSD, the 110 Samsung drives that we're going to be comparing with in our future videos, it doesn't matter which ones you buy, they're going to be expensive. The average cost of SSDs these days, about 25 to 30p, and that's British pence, per gigabyte. Okay, so you think, well, that doesn't sound like much. In hard drives, if you buy a 1 or a 2 or a 4 TB hard drive, the average price is 1 to 2 pence per gigabyte. Think about that. That is an enormously big difference there. That's why a 240 gig SSD costs so much, because of the NAND chips. You're not running disks, it doesn't have moving parts, it's a more specialist constructed piece of equipment, and the prices are respective of that. The speeds are faster, there's no electricity, there's a much lower electricity consumption, and of course less degradation on the drive. But hard drives, you get bigger sizes for much, much less money. In fact, some SSDs can't even match some of the 14 or even 16 terabyte hard drives we're seeing at the moment. Now, you can, of course, fully populate a NAS with these. It will work out a bit expensive, and you will get great performance. And if you're running 10 GBE, you're going to get no bottleneck internally or externally. But there's still no denying it's going to work out crazy expensive. So who is this drive for? Right now, in 2019, it's for two people. It's for people that are going to run flash station devices, so are using some of the basically flash NAS, that's all SSD-based NAS devices, where they need fast media access for a CPU that requires data that quickly exchanged, and of course 10 GBE externally, so you've got fast outside and in. But moreover, I would say this drive is more for caching. So if, like a number of the NAS devices I have here, I've got a 4-bay QNAP rack mount here on the table, and I've got a couple of Synologies there all over the shop. These devices all support SSD caching. It's the ability to have numerous hard drives inside, all in their own RAID, RAID 5 or whatever with that redundancy, but also to install 1 or 2 SSDs inside that provide a nice buffer to those hard drives. So with the read-write operations, frequently accessed data or common current access data is moved and copied, I should say, to those SSDs. The result is that your read and writes internally are drastically faster, and something that, thanks to techniques such as deduplication and auto-tiering, are only made the better. So if your NAS is getting a bit sluggish, or you're running a 10 GBE NAS but you don't want to fully populate it with SSDs, that's where SSD caching comes in. Populate it with hard drives, and then if you've got 1 or 2 bays free, or if you've got a device like this, which has SSD bays, although NVMe built into the bottom, you can then vastly improve the internal operations, and then you've got all that speed inside, and then you just need the right connection on the rear to get it out of there. So you get some great speeds there and a great drive to use it for. And I do recommend these for that, and that's one of the tests that I'm going to be running in the next videos. The last question, it's one that I fielded in my other video, and one that I talked about with Eddie the web guy on camera. Is Seagate just in it for the money? Are they just trying to, this is just silly branding? We said that about NAS hard drives, and dare I say it, we were wrong. NAS hard drives are important because you do need a drive that is tailored to the job at hand. But that same logic can't really be applied to SSD, can it? You think hard drives, the reason people had NAS hard drives over regular hard drives is because they were optimal for read-write operations. They gave you a better RAID stability. They, had better vibration sensors and temperature sensors, and, were on for greater lengths of time. But all of those bonuses of NAS hard drives could be applied to pretty much any SSD, right? Well, of course, Seagate, yes and no, are in it for the money. They're not going to produce something if there's no money in it. That's laughable. Why would anyone do anything like that in business? But there's no denying that a NAS-based SSD is needed right now. It is, because there are too many brands of SSD out there, and they actually are very different and very distinct. Some of them are very poor, very poor usage environments for RAID or caching. Some of them, you see an SSD that promises 440 megabytes per second or something, or even 520 or something. But because of the construction and the poor controller inside, you are getting some terrible speeds for caching, and you end up with an invisible bottleneck. And then when we bring that system of over-provisioning onto the table, once again, something QNAP are fighting there on their own NAS for when you've got pretty shoddy SSD media, that's something that a NAS optimized SSD can really take advantage of, and something that's included in this. So I do think there is a need for a NAS based SSD, and I do really think this could be it, with all the features and functionality knocked inside it, although that health management thing is still coming soon on the newer gen drives. I do think this is a necessary drive, and I am looking forward to doing these tests. If I did need an SSD for a NAS right now, I've been using these all this time. I've got a few samples I was sent of the Samsungs about 2 years ago now. But if I had to buy new drives right now, I'd probably buy these, because from what I understand, they're going to be lower in price, and you've got all the features and functionality. But the choice is yours. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions about this drive or other tests you want to see me perform, do let me know in the comments. I've got some M2 SSDs. I've got the standard Samsung Evos and Pros that I'm going to be running against, and I'm going to have different operational environments. So if you've got a question or something you want me to test for you in a future video, let me know in the comments. I'm going to give it a few days, rack up all the queries and put them all in a video for you. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you are interested in getting hold of one of these bad boys, go into the description, link to NAS Compares and to Span, where you can get hold of these worldwide now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Cheerio.